Welcome back. Let's start to actually write a test for the Google search function. The first thing we want to do is obviously have access to this Google search function, but in our test file. And that's simple. This is simply just JavaScript. We can just export this function and import it in here. Now, because this is Node, and we're not running in the browser or using Babel or Webpack, we don't have the import and export statements yet. Node is working on that, but for now, they're still using CommonJS, which, as you might know, has this syntax, module.exports equals, and we'll just do the Google search. We're going to export this, and then finally, we can import this at the very top of this test by saying const Google search equals require from the script file. Let's save that. And just to test it, let's just console.log this and do Google search. Save, run npm test. All right, so we have our console log of Google search. That's on script.js, but also in the test, we see that we're logging out function Google search, which is great. I'm going to comment this out for now because we know it's working. We don't want a console log. But you might have also noticed that it's kind of annoying running npm test over and over and over. And luckily for us, with Jest, we can do a nice, easy command. -- watch, and then we give it what to watch for. In our case, all JavaScript files. So anytime we make changes to any JavaScript files, Jest is going to watch out for those and have the test running constantly. Let's see what I mean. I'm going to save this and run npm test. And if you're wondering why I can run npm test and not npm run test, that's just the default of npm. If you do npm start or npm test, you can run those two commands without the run word. But if you do anything that you created yourself, like npm bake a cake, you have to do npm run bake a cake. All right, so now it's running. If I change anything in here to, let's just have save it, you see that it's now changing. If I change this, it's constantly updating with the new test. But nothing is happening in here yet. So let's write an actual test that we can use. So now that we have the Google search function, we want to test it. We want to say Google search, give it some sort of a dummy input. Let's say test, and somehow say whatever this returns should match whatever. And remember, that's an assertion library. We want to make an assertion. And you may notice one issue here. What about the database? Well, we'll have to export this database as well, right? And we totally can. We could do Google database and add it to the module exports. But is that realistic? You see, in real life, you're not going to just export the database and import it into a test and have the test actually go through the database. That's really expensive, really slow, and a huge headache. Ideally, you want to mock it. You want to pretend that we have a database in here so that it makes tests run faster. Let me show you how we can do that. We can just say db mock, a database mock, and this mock will have some dummy database, which isn't actually our real database, just something that we can test on. So let's say this one has dog.com, it has cheesepuff.com, it has, let's say, disney.com, and it has dogpictures.com. So completely different from our real database. All right, so we have this now, but the problem is, well, Google search up until this point was using the Google database. And if we run this function in script.test.js, well, we don't have access to that database. We'd have to manually change the function and make sure that it filters through the DB mock. And a good way of solving this issue, and the way you want to write your functions, is again, you want them to be pure, and you also want to add things to them like a database through something called dependency injection. That is, in order for us to make this reusable and use it in other parts of our code base, have the database injected into Google search so that anybody using it can, like I am in the test, can inject this DB mock instead of the real database. And that's really easy to do. All we need to do is pass it a parameter of, let's say, DB, and I'm going to change this into DB. And now this Google search is more extensible. We can add whatever database we want to filter now. All we need to do is when we call the function, is to add a second parameter of Google database. If we comment that out and go back to our test file, we can enter the DB mock database. Let's save now and see what happens. All right, test is passing, but we're not really testing anything right now. We're just returning things and running this function, but that's not where we want to test. It's not very meaningful that we run this function. We want to assert that this does what we expect it to do. And again, just like we had the it keyword, just gives us a nice little function for us to use. If you go to using matchers, we see that in their documentation, they have the expect and to be. And they have a few other things that you can use: to be undefined, to be defined, to be falsy, truthy, and they have a ton. For now, let's comment this out and say that we expect hello to be hello. Hello to equal hello. All right, let's save that. All right, everything is passing. But if I change this to no and save, I get a failed test. It says it expected the no value but received hello. And it's got pretty nice output. It shows you which line failed and what the test failed at. Using that logic, let's change now the Google search to have expect. And you know what? Let's keep this test because I like this test. We'll do hello at hello and calls this it is a silly test. And create another test. Again, we can just have as many as we want. And this one will say it is searching Google. And in here, we'll have the function. Let's add a space here because that looks nicer. And we'll say that we expect Google search, and we can just copy this. We expect Google search, and we're running that function with test db mock. And here we can use, instead of to be, we can also do to equal. And within the to equal, now let me just create a new line just so you can see it. It's going to say we expect it to equal an empty array because there's no test here. Let's save. Oh, and I forgot a little bracket here. We want the expect to have the result of this. So we need an extra bracket over here. So make sure you get that right. Let's save. Oh, and we don't need that now. Perfect. Again, maybe not having it on two lines is better so we can see. So we have the expect function that runs this. and to equal to test that this equals the empty array. We can now add another line, and let's say that now we want to expect Google to test dog. And if dog exists, we want it to include these two websites. So we can add dog.com to this array, and also dogpictures.com to this array. And let's save. All right, this is running and passing. We still have two tests because, well, there's only two of them. But if I change this to, let's say, just DG, I'll get an error because we got something different than what we expected. We expected a different array. There you go. We have our very first test. I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.